Welcome to the Imperfect Dads Podcast. This is your host, Devin. We believe dads care deeply about their family and kids, but they don't always have a space to discuss what their life looks like. Our podcast is a space for dads to discuss the ups and downs of fatherhood and how they feel like they're holding it together or how they're not. Thank you for joining us for this episode. This podcast is part of the Never a Face Network. Make sure to follow them on Instagram or go to the website neverafacenetwork.com. On this episode, we have on author Marissa Burt. We talked about being a mom to 6 kids, balancing time and intentionality with her kids, over-researching things, how she ended up in the Pacific Northwest, and how unique every kid can be. A lot of our talk is about her new book she wrote with Kelsey Kramer McGinnis, The Myth of Good Christian Parenting, How False Promises Betrayed a Generation of Evangelical Families. This book is a deep dive into Christian parenting some of you may have been raised on. It talks a lot about who wrote the books our parents may have taken advice from, the legacy of the people, and the lasting effect of those teachings. Marissa and Kelsey do a great job with the book discussing the culture of communities while asking the questions if the teachings were biblical or not. I think a lot of parenting is looking back at your childhood and deciding to repeat or change habits and patterns. I know a lot of people who have deconstructed or were raised in a church environment, and this book puts a lot of great words and language to feelings and realities I know I've experienced and I know other people have too. I think that this book was a great way to explore an environment that a lot of us were raised in. This book doesn't blame parents or say, parents, you should have done it better. If anything, it leaves with a lot of empathy towards parents to be like, hey, here's what you were taught, here's what you're told was good. And for a lot of those people, their kids don't talk to them anymore. So I think this book is just a great resource and tool to try to understand your own childhood, maybe understand your parents' mindset and what culture a lot of us might have been raised in. And also just one more thing.
Dad, just start the episode.
Oh, my bad. Because sometimes I myself in the moment don't want to be like, hi, welcome to another episode of The Imperfect. And I'm like, kind of want to do it. So, hey, Marissa, welcome to an episode of The Imperfect Dads.
I'm glad to be here. Is it imperfect? We can be okay with imperfection, right?
I'm really leaning into the fact whenever you have a podcast title like Imperfect in it, you can lean into being a mess consistently. Or if anyone watches them on YouTube and my hair is awful, it's like, you guys knew what you were getting into when you saw the title.
That's right. It's nice safety net there.
Exactly. It's whenever I'm allowing myself the room for failure successfully. That's what we're here for. Let's start with a really basic question. How many kids do you have? Ages, all that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. I am the mother to 6, all the way between my youngest is 5 and my oldest is off at college. So I try and give my older kids more privacy and don't go into too many details. But got that whole spread. It's delightful and wild and wonderful at our house. Many children.
My gosh. So I will say just massive respect to that. Before my wife got pregnant, I always thought birthing a child is a lot of work. And then watching my wife be pregnant 3 times, giving birth, the recovery, the year of resetting hormones. I'm like, oh, you did that 6 times? Holy
it's
superhero.
Kind of a blur. There's kind of a blur for a couple decades there. I think of it a little bit like cloistered life, right? I do feel like pregnancy, it's just a whole thing that can be, depending on your temperament, maybe. For me, it just was immersive.
Yeah.
In a number of ways. And the lead up and then the recovery afterward. And so we're emerging from that. It's funny because we will say there's a gap between, we have kind of 3 and then a gap of about 5 or 6 years and then 3 more. My husband and I just the other day were saying, oh, we're in new territory now. We're finally reaching the point where we don't have any, we have older kids with no little ones coming behind. So it's interesting. It's different. So they're wonderful.
That's awesome. It's crazy how my oldest is 9 and she'll turn 10 in February. And I've never had a kid be a decade old before. I feel like parenting has constant moments where no matter how confident and egotistical I am about having a newborn, it's you've never had a 10-year-old before, man. Have fun.
It's all new. And then when you have more than one, it's it's a totally different person. So even though you feel like I've got a handle on some of this, not so, because everybody's different.
Not at all. I think comfort techniques, whenever our kids were babies, that was the immediate ego check when the second born hated all the firstborn comfort techniques. And I was like, no, I have to learn. No, just go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Please stop. I'm done.
I resonate with that for sure.
What was tell me about comfort techniques whenever you had babies.
Gosh.
You had 6, so I'm sure you had to have a whole playbook of comfort techniques. What were your go-tos for your
Yeah,
kids?
for like what? Going to sleep?
Whenever, if they're
Or
losing their mind,
okay,
something like that.
yeah,
I'm thinking more ages 1 to 2,
okay,
for comfort techniques
yeah.
whenever they're kind of
Well, and
elevated.
again, it so depends on the child because I think many parents go to is like draw them close and
Hmm.
like snuggle or comfort. And for some kids that is really soothing.
They hate it
But
though.
I've had a few who hate it. Yeah, and are like don't touch me, don't look at me.
Yeah.
Like they don't want that. And so just maybe like sitting near, just kind of like saying, I'm here if you need, like it really, and often it's like they need that and then they want
Hmm.
the snuggles. So, oh yeah, that really, I mean, it feels like you are a bit of a sleuth sometimes where you're studying your child and you're kind of experimenting, or maybe a sleuth and a scientist. You're also just trying different things to be like, well, maybe today they do want to like
Hmm.
get on the lap and whatever, or maybe today they want me to hand them a stuffed animal and they want some space. So yeah, I don't really have like a secret trick, right? Like
No,
it's
no,
just in the moment, you're trying to figure it out and also trying to figure out what's going on with you because
of course.
sometimes
Yeah,
I could see like, oh, this child might need that snuggling, but I
I'm good.
really do not feel like, you know what I mean?
I do, yes.
So some of
Yeah.
it is that matchup and just
Yeah.
maybe the big one is flexibility and
Yeah.
curiosity to keep trying different things.
Pretty much.
But
Yeah.
whew,
It
and I'm
is
sure,
weird.
yeah, I'm sure by the time grandchildren come along too, I'll be
Oh,
like,
well,
none of
I
these
don't
things
remember.
work.
Yes.
What were you going to say?
I was gonna say, like even my 4-year-old today, like we went to story time because he does pre-K like Monday through Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
and so like he's like sitting in my lap for the story time, and then like by minute 15, I was like, it's actually really uncomfortable for me. Like I know
Yeah.
this is like comforting for you, and you're close to me. This is really sweet, but like I'm not like this
Like
is
my
weird.
back,
Like this, like there's like a weird weight distribution, and then he pouts because I'm like, but I'm not saying I don't want to be near you. I'm old and I don't like putting an extra 30 to 40 pounds in my lap every once in a while.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
My bad.
Yeah. Story time days. That's fun. I love library story time, I
Libraries are awesome.
assume. Oh, it's amazing.
It is. When your kids were younger, did you ever stay home with your kids, or did you
Hmm.
work and keep a career the whole time?
Yeah, so I have always like worked part-time from
Mhm.
home,
Yeah.
which has been a wonderful fit for me. So I did some distance education, like faculty assistant stuff when my older kids were really small, and then I'm a writer. So
Okay.
I've been able to kind of fit that around and then did a little teaching and editing kind of freelance, again, fit that around.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that has been a huge help because all of those things can kind of like grow to fit the margin time I have or pause, like during
Yeah.
pregnancy or postpartum to be able to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to start a new writing project.
That's
So
cool.
yeah.
That's awesome.
And then my husband has primarily worked
Yeah.
outside of the home.
Yeah. I'm the stay-at-home or primary parent, whatever
Okay,
you
yeah.
want to call it. And I could not, for 3 kids, I'm like, this is a lot. I couldn't imagine doing 6 kids. So kudos
Yeah.
to you
Thank you.
did
It's a
you
little
want a big family or?
Well, I was one of those people who never even thought I was going to get married,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
all of it was like
Yeah.
theoretical, like
I gotcha. Yep.
and I have one older sibling and
Mm,
so came from a smallish
yeah.
comparatively family. And so when we got married, no, I don't think so. It was
Okay.
sort of like
Okay.
this unfolding thing. Once we started having children and
Yeah.
then we had 3 really close together. They
Mhm.
were my oldest was 3 when I had my third. So they were like 3 in
Yeah.
3.5 years. So they were like a
Goodness.
little pack. And then I think it took us like 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And then we were like, should we go
Yeah.
again?
Yeah.
And
Are we
now at
crazy?
we are like very intense, both of us. But now I'm so thankful and it's such a grace to have taken that leap, because as the oldest 3 are launching, to still have these 3 and be in the thick of it. So yeah, no, it was a pleasant surprise to me. Very
That
pleasant.
My wife was actually the same way, where kind of the same sentiment of like, I would like to get married, but I only have so much
Yeah.
control over that. So like, if it happens, it happens. And then we got married, and I was like, should we have kids? And she was like, oh, yeah, yeah, let's do it. But like
Yeah.
5 years ago, me didn't think anyone would marry me. So let me just
Yeah.
reset my
Yeah.
expectations a little bit because it's
part of life.
Yeah. So, it's funny to think back to, I just this weekend, actually, I was digging around trying to find a YouTube video. Anyway, I came across a forgotten YouTube account I had made back when my eldest was born. This is pre-iPhone days when he was born.
Ooh,
So
okay.
to send little videos to extended family, we would upload it to YouTube as like an unlisted
Yes.
video and send it because it was too big to
Mhm.
download back
Yep.
in the old tech days. But I found it and I hadn't seen it. It had just been lost. It's like
That's so
30
cute.
videos and it was so fun, but funny to look back and also see us in it
Huh?
from
Yeah.
like 20 whatever years ago and be like, we had no idea. Right? I mean, I think that's true for every parent. Like, no matter how prepared you are, no matter if you were a wanting children all your life, wanting to be a parent, you just have no idea.
No. Did you study education? Like, do you have a background in education, I'm assuming?
I do not, actually.
Oh,
So I
what? Okay.
studied in undergrad. I studied sociology and ancient languages. So immensely practical degrees in undergrad. So did that. And then when my husband and I got married pretty soon after we both graduated from college, we both we moved across the country to be bed and breakfast innkeepers. This was right after 9/11, so it was actually difficult to find work in our field. So we did that. And then through that, we both ended up working in the schools. I was teaching fifth grade at a little Christian school, and he was working as a paraprofessional in the public schools with Spanish-speaking students. And after that, we both thought, well, let's get graduate degrees in education because we really loved that environment. And so we moved across the country again to go to seminary together because the seminary we went to at the time had a program for spouses could go free, like if one student was enrolled. So we were like,
2 for 1 deal?
2 for 1. They stopped the deal a year after we got there,
Yeah,
but whatever.
of course they
got
did.
us there. And neither of us ended up studying education. So he went on to do seminary coursework. He's a priest now, so he went into the pastorate. And I ended up studying church history in seminary and a master's in theological studies. So, I mean, education's kind of in our DNA. We love to teach and that sort of thing, but I didn't officially study that, so learning a lot along the way.
Cool. Yeah. Are you a pretty... it sounds like you enjoy researching things. Is that safe to say?
Too much.
Too much? Okay.
You know, if you know, people out there who are also over researchers are like, oh yeah, too much.
Yeah. That's how... I feel like I enjoy researching things as well. Not probably to the same degree as you.
Yeah.
But I'm always like, no, because I enjoy soccer a lot. So I'll be like, yeah, of course I know all the World Cup stats. I know like goal leaders, who won in this today. And then I'm like, what do I do with this knowledge? Like, am I just hoping that I go to a trivia where someone's like, hey, in 1998, what was the score of France versus Brazil? And I'm like,
I know.
Clearly everyone knows this.
Very useful
And I'm like, no. How do you just research stuff because of curiosity, because it's fun to you? Like, whenever you research stuff, how do you feel as you research?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I think it's curiosity is what it starts with, and then a little bit of obsessiveness. I mean, and I'm only halfway joking.
I agree.
You know, like I have OCD ways of thinking about things. And so sometimes it can just be like a fixation, but it can also kind of be a superpower sometimes when you can direct that into maybe healthier channels. And so sometimes, or it'll be problem solving. And I think for me, you know, as a Christian studying church history, sociology of religion, things like distorted theologies or the impact of Christian teaching and doctrine on communities is interesting to me, and kind of researching that and trying to spotlight different things in that. So, I think a lot of it is interest led. But maybe is not helpful for things like birth plans, right? No. Where you're like, you research a million things and a million outcomes, and then it's like, it's just going to be what it's going to be. So, you know, there's the flip side.
But I agree with you of like, I enjoy Jamar Tisby a lot. I think Jamar Tisby is like a phenomenal author and all that. And he'll like do things like, hey, here's what religion was like in this community at this time. And I'm like, tell me more. How do I find out more?
Right.
And that's that to me, that makes me more empathetic. Whereas my overfixated, if you do Enneagram speak, I'm a 4 with a very strong 5-wing.
Okay,
and so
I'm
like,
a 5.
Yeah,
so,
there you go. That makes sense. Yeah. Whereas like, hey man, you've now analyzed this thing that you aren't going to do anything with for hours, even days. And you've kind of ignored like something in your life because the research seems more intoxicating to you than doing the dishes. So do the dishes instead.
Yeah. It's kind of like self-knowledge. And for me, it's like when will I get to the bottom of this topic? Like, I'll keep going. So learning how to boundary that, to be like,
done.
Enough,
Stop it.
enough. Like, I will never get to the bottom of the internet.
You won't.
Like, I will never. So
won't.
it's okay. It's okay. At some point, there's enough knowledge here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me about, like, since you have 6 kids, this is, slight, I jump around a lot.
This is great. I love it.
I have 3 kids, and I consistently am like, how do I give enough of myself to these kids? How do I feel like I'm doing anything like right to them and all of that? There's a constant question of parenting of, how do you feel like you've set your kid up for success?
Yeah.
How's your mental space around that? I also feel like the standard for a mom and a dad is drastically different. On a day-to-day basis, how's your mental space feel as a mom?
Yeah, like, it's hard not to fall into that scarcity mindset because there's not enough of me to go around with 6. And I think even parents of 1 child feel that, right?
Absolutely.
Because again, you can never get to the bottom. There's always more you can give. And so I definitely felt that tension a lot in the years when I would have a nursing infant or a very young child, because it's so high demand.
Yes.
And I would feel that tension with my older children because it's easy to kind of be like, okay, they're more independent, fine, because their needs are different.
Yes.
And the immediacy of like a very young child's needs can displace that. And that's challenging. Over the years, my husband and I we're researchers, thinkers, and planners. So we have both done different kind of like strategies maybe for how to do that, how to really carve out space to focus on individual children. Because I do think, there's so many pros and cons in any family situation, but in large family, there's so many lovely things. But one of them is there's less time, less parents. And so we've both done it a little bit differently. I love what he does. He does this thing where he's like a visionary thinker. So he has like mapped out each year. He has designated a year of the child on this 3 cycles. 3-year, not a 3-year cycle, 3 cycles over the course of their life, where they will each have a year for 3 times where it will be their year, where he just does special things with them in the evenings or on the weekend. They take a special trip together. And so he'll do it at around age like 7 or 8, and then the tween years, and then the teen years. And so that's a way where he really gets that focus, and they feel special and their interests are seen. And so he kind of has done that with intentionality. And I do it on a more daily like spectrum rhythm, in that I will try and do one-on-one with them on a rotation, like kind of keep that and be like, let's go out to breakfast or let's have a movie night together or something like that, as long as they're interested, which I feel like something like that gives you the not baseline, but just gives you the opportunity to have conversations or just build memories that are one-on-one. Because I do think that's challenging. And I've loved it going into the tween and teen years. It's lovely to have that time and get that one-on-one. But yeah, it's tricky. What do you do? What do you do with 3?
My wife is better at it than I am, because since I'm the stay-at-home primary parent,
You're with them a lot.
I'm around all the time. So for me to be like, hey, oldest one, you and me are going to go do something. Like I need to be more intentional about it, because I think intentionality is always the answer to it.
Yeah.
My wife travels for work also pretty consistently. So she has already started I think the deficit she feels a lot, because she's like, oh, I wasn't here for 3 days this week.
Right.
I'm going to do a date with her oldest and a date with the middle child. And the youngest one, who's 4, is only now starting to look up and be like, hey, what about
when do I
me?
Get that?
So I think already in life, there's naturally moments where like a week or 2 ago, my wife took the 2 older girls to go see Wicked with her sister, like downtown and stuff. So I took my son to like Main Event, and I was like, hey man, you got $40 for the arcade, like whatever you want to do.
Fun. Yeah, so let's do this.
There's naturally some moments like that where I end up being one-on-one with a kid, and whenever I see that moment's happening, it's like, oh, lean into this, because you don't know if it's going to happen again. But intentionality is the only thing I can ever think of. But like I think an intentional mindset and a problem-solving mindset are very different. And I feel like whenever you're the primary parent at home, it's mostly problem-solving, making sure needs are met. So then to switch from that to intentionality is like, but I feel like all my intentionality was spent on making sure you're fed.
Yeah, on this task list. Oh, do I resonate with that? Yeah, and the tasks do have to get done, and it is such an important part of the work. I remember when our oldest was 5, so he was in kindergarten, going to the parent-teacher conference, and the teacher saying that the thing he always talked about in their show and tell or whatever it was his stay up night with his parents. Because when they were very young, that's what we would do. They would each get one stay up night a week where they
Cool.
could stay up for an extra hour just with us while the
That's
others went to bed.
fine. Yeah.
And for me, it was so helpful to have that so early on that, like, for us, that felt kind of like not a big deal, like a small thing. But for
Yeah.
him, it was
the
like
world.
the stay up night, and we
That's
would
cool.
just play a game or watch a movie or whatever he wanted to do. And so, yeah, I think you're right. Like the intentionality that says you're not a task on my task list, but you're a person I want to spend time with and see and care about.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So with your husband's like plan for when to like be more intentional with the kids, it sounds almost like if I think of stage of life, it's like about to enter middle school, about to enter into high school, and then in the thick of high school. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, kind of. And some of it is just because there's so many, he kind of had to get creative with
to make
how
the math
he would
work.
do it. But yeah, and really to have that last one is usually in their junior or senior year, like before launch. And that's so special. It's so special. So, and he does a little like ritual at the front of it. They do like a s'mores fire, and this is the year, and they name the year, and
That's awesome.
It's very sweet and very memorable. I love it so much for them.
I am fascinated by like male initiation rites because they don't really. I mean, I think if I think of male initiation rites for most generations, it was like, did you go to war? Cool, you're a man now.
Right.
And
yeah, or
like,
there was something. Yeah. Or something in the social fabric of like, here's the ceremony. You're right. We don't, in American culture, we don't.
In American culture,
have that.
It is something that takes more intentionality. My son's only 4. I haven't really put much thought into it yet.
Yeah, you've got some time.
I got some time to figure out.
And that could be a piece of it. We have 5 sons and 1 daughter. So it could be that he has given a lot of thought to that as a father.
That makes sense. Yeah. But it's I don't know. I think that intentionality seems important. It's not, I mean, women also need to be, or girls also need to be initiated. Respect, because to me, that's just respect. It's like, hey, this is the next phase of your life. Here's what I think will be required of you. And here's also what I think you're capable of. It's like a level set moment to be like, here's where it's up. Yeah. As opposed to like, I don't know, if both parents work, there's chaos at all times. And it's like, oh, you're 13 now. What cake did you want? Like, did you, was it pie this year? I don't know.
Yeah.
Always takes more intentionality. That's how I feel about parenting.
Those milestone marking. Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, hey, other thing, want to make sure to talk about.
Yeah.
I know you exist because you wrote a book that I thought was really cool. So I want to make sure to give you a chance to talk about your book because I think it's fascinating and really well done. So if you want to give like a little intro on what your book is and all that, and then I'll ask like, what made you want to write it and all those questions.
Sure. I, along with my co-author, Kelsey Kramer McGinnis, wrote the book, The Myth of Good Christian Parenting, How False Promises Betrayed a Generation of Evangelical Families. It came out this fall. In the book, we trace the history and development of popular Christian parenting ideas really from 1970 on to the present. We look at some of the specific themes that recur across this teaching, and then we consider the impact. We surveyed a number of adult children and older parents as we wrote the book to kind of hear how did this play out in the lives of American families. So a really fascinating project to research and write about. Profoundly impactful to hear people share their stories and to kind of bear witness to some of that. And now it feels wonderful to have it launched out into the world and be able to be on people's bookshelves and hear from readers now too.
Yes. And I know like whenever I'd reached out to you, I had mentioned to you that like I talk to a lot of parents and I feel like whenever you become a parent, you naturally reanalyze your own childhood. And then you make the decision consciously or not to repeat what was done to you or to take the moment to change what was done to you. In writing this book, was any of that your story of like, hey, I was raised in this way. Oh my gosh, I'm not like, was any of this like the acceptance of your childhood or rejection of it to some extent? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good question. Not really, actually.
Cool. Yeah.
Interestingly, both Kelsey and I grew up in Christian communities, right? So I have been adjacent to some of these different ideas in differing ways, but it's not a memoir or processing my story, and she's not processing her story in that sense. However, the ways I have come up against it is I'm married to a pastor and have been in parish ministry for a couple of decades. So in that sense, have heard from so many people the ways that these ideas played out in their lives as adult children reflecting back or as older parents. So there are certainly things, I think like for any of us, where there are things in your own story, your own history that might echo or rhyme with this, like things elements, but it's not, and in the sense that I think anyone in American evangelicalism who was a kid in the 70s and 80s knew about Dr. Dobson, right? Like I remember listening to him on the radio or something. But yeah, this is, so it's more adjacent to my story. And as a parent as well, you know, I've parented over 2 decades, so I have come across a number of these resources as a parent, but I count myself fortunate in that I was heavily invested in Christian marriage resources as a newlywed.
Yeah.
And then that kind of blew up pretty early on in our marriage. And so I think by the time children came along, I was not as keen to follow a bunch of these resources myself. So it's interesting because I think both Kelsey and I bring enough awareness to be able to write, I think, insightfully about this dynamic with enough distance that we're trying to be observational about things.
Like you didn't have your own, like whenever you're writing about like, hey, this child got beat, you weren't like, oh my gosh, I was beat as a child.
Right.
And then you have
I'm
to
processing my trauma on the page here or something like that. But I do think I think it's true that for every parent, when you begin to start parenting, it's going to trigger and bring up family of origin stuff. And if you don't address that, it's reactive one way or the other, how you're going to parent. It's going to replicate or just be like, well, I'm just going in the opposite direction. To be honest, I think a number of people who picked up these resources, particularly in the 70s and 80s, were doing that. I think a number of them were reacting to their own family of origin dynamics. So the pendulum kind of swings. So it's difficult work because you're in the middle of parenting, which is emotionally exhausting and takes up a lot of space. And then to be thinking about your own history as a child, to maybe reparent yourself or to go to therapy or things like this, it is a lot to navigate. And we heard from a number of people navigating that as well as we wrote it.
No, I thought the testimonies you got for the book, how did you get people to talk about this with you? Because it's so deeply personal, because some people who like their parents would hit them and beat them. And then you're like, hey, can you tell me what that felt like and how that affects you now? And like, I wouldn't know I have no idea how to start that conversation with someone because I don't feel qualified in any way. How'd you approach that?
Yeah, well, this is why, I loved working with my co-author, Kelsey. Like we both brought a different skill set to this. Like I come with a background of theology and pastoral ministry, and she comes with a background of a cultural historian and academic. And as someone who's worked in the human rights sphere. So she was well equipped to help us launch a qualitative survey. Like originally, I would love to, and I hope someone does this. It was well beyond the scope of what we could do, but I would love to see quantitative data to say, like what are numbers of estrangement in families who parent about, but it's very complex and it requires a lot of time. And
which I feel like you talked about in the book also. It's like, we'd love to get this data.
Yeah.
Good luck getting
it's difficult,
good luck.
right? It's like chicken and egg. And how do you do so? Maybe there are research teams who have the capacity to do that. So we ended up wanting to go with a qualitative, so more survey oriented. So we designed a really open-ended survey questionnaire. We kind of sent it out across social media and invited responses. First, just like introductory responses. And then we sent out a more specific questionnaire with open-ended questions because we didn't want to guide people. We weren't trying to like fish for answers. We knew already that we would probably hear more from people who had experienced harm and injury than others. But we wanted to ask questions like, what were the dynamics around extended family relationships in your family like, or what was discipline like in or things that just really let people respond at length. And they did. A number of people did. As we wrote, we also posted a lot of our pre-writing on social media. So we also heard informally from a ton of people, which was fascinating. I think it just really goes to show how tender this topic is and how eager people are to have this conversation. But our survey respondents, some of them we followed up with Zoom interviews to kind of hear a little bit more. And then all of them, they signed permission forms and different things to be included in the book. So at the end of that, I think we ended up with, it was just under 100 people willing to be included in our book that we spoke with. And of course, it was very difficult to select excerpts to include in the book, but we tried to select excerpts that were representative of things we had heard a number of times. So, it was such a grace, honestly, to be a witness to these things because some of these things go to such deep, tender places, both with the parents and the adult children alike. So it's an interesting part of the process.
Yeah, I feel like because you also I feel like you had quotes from parents in the book also who are like, hey, because as I will always say on this podcast, we're all trying to figure it out. We're all hoping we're doing right by our kids. And sometimes you look up and you go, oh man, I was very wrong in this. And you do have parents in the book who are like, hey, I went by these teaching things and like my kids now refuse to talk to me and I'm trying to figure out how to bridge this gap.
Yeah.
And that hurts to realize.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And I think it's why we use the language of betrayal in our subtitle, because I think these promises betrayed entire families.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, I think children experience the brunt of this often. And at the same time, in many families, parents were also betrayed. They misplaced trust in leaders who were making promises that the fruit down the road would be inauthentic connection and estrangement. And so, certainly I do think sometimes abusive people were drawn to these teachings as well. Like sometimes that happens. I think on the whole, many parents were trusting these promises that if I do that, this is God's way to parent, or if I do this right, I'll get a certain outcome. And that is a tremendous betrayal to then find years down the road that what you were doing was actually destroying connection rather than contributing to it, because you don't get those years back. It's so painful. Like it really robbed a lot of families.
It did. I think the thing that like listening through it, the stories you told of how many like that people in charge would tell stories of like, after I spanked my child, they said, thank you for the spanking. And I'm like, that's, you guys did a great job of discussing, I feel like, power dynamics that exist within a family. Whereas like, if you're a kid who just got spanked by your dad, all you know is you want your dad's love and you don't want to be hit again. You're going to say, it's like being waterboarded. Like you're going to just make this, I'm going to do whatever it takes to move on from this.
Especially when you're talking about children, this is their primary caregiver. They're, as Christians, we would say God-given wiring for safety. So that has been disrupted in that moment. So of course it's like, because everything, fight or flight, fawn, freeze, all of that is triggered. So so many things.
A lot of this book has some heavy text like that, or subtext to it, in which you had to research a lot of this. How were you with like not bringing that home, or with like compartmentalizing that? Like, because you would go from hearing stories, reading stories about people who were abused by their parents, and then go be a mom. How was that switch for you? Because that would be very difficult.
It was hard. It was hard. In some ways, certainly it made me tender toward my own children in fresh ways. It certainly brought accountability to me, in moments where I could feel impatient or whatever, to like think of my own work that I was doing of like, what do I want to communicate to my children? What will they remember? What is their perspective? It made me curious to hear from them. Particularly had some wonderful conversations with my older children. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Or what do you remember? What was that like for you? I think it wasn't until, writing a book is a multi-year process. So we started writing this book almost 3 years ago.
Okay.
This spring. And it really wasn't until about a year ago that I think I began to realize the personal weight of it, maybe once the book was written and off to edits. And it's been heavy. It's been heavy in a lot of ways. It is difficult content to talk about, and it is difficult to read people's stories as well. It's a privilege and also hard because there's so much to lament and grieve and be angry about. I think particularly as a Christian, seeing the way this mirrors what goes on in church family systems, a lot of similar dynamics, and even in political rhetoric, that is difficult to see it play out in those ways. So I think I was kind of late to the game of realizing, my nervous system is crying out for me to be a little more intentional with how do I disconnect from this? How do I set boundaries around this? How do I make sure I'm practicing good things to protect mental health and stuff like that? So that did come, but a little bit later on.
Hey, as a fellow nerd, I also think researching something is really energizing. The curiosity can be like almost, it's intoxicating to some extent. And there's a come down that comes from that where you're like, I just learned about this really awful thing. I'm really fascinated, but tell me all the dynamics. What happened here? Why was anyone ever okay with this? Like, I'll read about World War II and be like, how was Germany okay with so many things? And then I'll be like, how did this happen? Because these were humans that all decided this was okay. And then like the next day I'll be like, that makes me really sad humans can do this. I have an emotional come down afterwards,
Absolutely. And it sits with you. So maybe my answer is to be determined. I think some of that is still to be determined, because...
Are you going to do some research on how you should feel about it?
Yes, maybe that's what I should do. I don't know. Like some of it is too, like the book launch process is such a whirlwind that I feel like just now that's kind of coming to an end. So we'll see. We'll see how 2026 finds me.
Was this your first book to ever release?
It's my first nonfiction book. So I've written 5 middle grade novels over the years.
Fun.
Yeah, which are delightful and fun. But
Little
this was my first nonfiction project. And let me tell you what, it's a lot harder to research things than just to make it up and write it on the page.
Well, because like you can't like, I know Stephen King for The Stand famously said like, yeah, I wrote all these characters. I was doing all this stuff. Then I got stuck. And then I just decided to like blow up a building and kill half of them and continue the story.
Right.
You can't, when you're researching people's story, you can't like be like, by the way, here's a new character and now I have my ending. You can't do that when discussing church history and people's family lives.
Yeah. And we really wanted to bring some sound scholarship to this too, talking about the history and sociology. Yes. And so in that sense, we did want to almost over research. You know, we read or referenced over 100 popular Christian parenting materials, media. And I think that was overkill, but also I'm really glad we did that, you know, because I think as a result, when we sent the book out into the world, I could feel quite confident. Saying, no, these were recurrent themes. You know, we're trying to build an argument here. And so in doing all of that research, I think that paid off. But yes, it was a lot more work to put that into it than just like sitting there with my notepad. Like what should happen next? What plot point next?
What's the conflict that I get to create?
Exactly. What would really increase the stakes here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As opposed to being like, oh man, I just got the response to this questionnaire and I'm crying.
Right, exactly. And how do we do justice to people's stories too in a way that they will feel accurately represented? And also, how do we do justice to the people we're discussing? And we really try and thread that needle in the book with the hope that even if some of the people we're critiquing were to read this, they would not find their words unfairly represented. Like they may disagree with where we land. So we're trying to do a number of things, and I hope we did it well, but we certainly gave it our best shots.
Yeah. I think your method was to read a bunch of books and be like, hey, here's what was said in all these books.
Yeah.
Let's talk to the people who were the subject of these books. How do they feel about it?
Yeah.
They don't talk to their parents anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. So
let's talk about the fruit.
Let's talk about this. So the fruit is not what they wanted. And betrayal's the ultimate word for it of just like, hey, you thought you were doing right by your child and you were damaging each other this entire time.
Yep. And we really wanted the people who had experienced it to feel seen. And we also wanted to produce something that maybe defensive or fragile parents could read without feeling heaped with shame. Like we really wanted something that could get at the complexity of this dynamic.
Because it is. It's super complex.
You know, that it's possible that people could be victims and victimizers.
Correct.
That there could be a lot of dynamics going on here. But yes, we wanted to look at the primary sources and say, if people applied, let's take them at their word. If people applied this, what would that look like? And then to talk to people who did. Because obviously it's going to be have individually impacted families differently, and even siblings with the same family differently, right? Because people are different, and the way people picked and choose what to apply is different, which is why one reason quantitative data is so difficult to even just discern when you're talking about family dynamics. But yeah, we wanted to do a good job. These stories are important, and I think, especially in a moment where we can still see these ideas being recycled in social media from Christian parenting influencers. I think until you examine it, they're just going to keep being regurgitated in different ways. So we really wanted to spotlight them as well, to say we can be done with a lot of this. For people still in the church and in Christian communities, we can acknowledge the way that we as a collective community enabled this and sold this and propagated this, and we can stop doing that.
Yeah, correct. And then that fruit hopefully becomes actual like good fruit.
Yeah. Hopefully like we can find better ways forward. We can do this differently. Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. No, I genuinely, I know I told you before we started talking. Yeah, because you have a kid and you think like, all right, I have a 2-year-old, and 2-year-olds, they test every limit. That's their role in life, is to test every limit. And I don't think like you're looking for obedience, but you are looking for like, how do I have control in this moment? A church, like, I mean, you guys didn't talk about blanket training at all in the book, did you? but I'm sure you're familiar.
We reference it in passing, and we talk about Michael Pearl a little bit.
Yes.
But yeah.
But like that was a thing. I mean, I remember my mom telling me like, people told me to blanket train you kids, which is basically if you go off the blanket, you slap their hands so they think only the blanket is safe. Yep. And she was like, there's no way in heck I was ever going to do that to you guys. But like, you have a kid, you have all this frustration, you have all this exhaustion, and you're like, what do I do to gain control? What do I do to gain something here? And if someone tells you blanket train your 6-month-old, and then you see what feels like a positive result to you, you think you did something right.
You think you did something right. And for so many Christian parents, this also came with spiritual catechesis, like really high stakes. Like if you don't get your 6-month-old to comply, they will never learn to obey God kind of thing. And I think even for parents who maybe otherwise would be like, I don't want to do blanket training. Then may see their tantruming 3-year-old though and be like, oh,
it's because
is my child going to grow up to be like a juvenile delinquent, like all these books describe, right? A lot of these books played on parental fears. Like if you get this wrong, like many bad things will happen to your child and they will become a bad person. It's so many stakes here. And also played on the aspirations and hopes of parents. Like, of course, parents want something good for their child. So they kind of like really pulled both of those levers in significant ways. And because it came wrapped up with this is God's way, this biblical authority language, it made it that much harder for devout parents to walk away.
Correct.
The way maybe, I think in secular communities, you can still find bad parenting advice, but a lot of times people have an easier time tossing a book in the trash and picking one they choose because they're just picking from a number of authoritative voices. But in Christian circles, this came as like, this isn't just my advice. This is the word of God advice. This is what God wants you to do. Yep. So some parents were able to. We did hear from some older parents who were able to toss these books or not follow them. And at the end of the book, we kind of invite people to get curious about why they maybe weren't able to do that. If they were parents who operated, like what drew them to this kind of teaching. And a lot of it's community-based because, if you're in a community where you don't know what you're doing as a new parent and an older parent is like, try this resource or here's what we do. There's a lot of trust there. And I think a lot of times people who were new converts or newly returned to the church once they had children were really vulnerable to this teaching as well, because they were saying, well, okay, I want to do this the Christian way. And here's someone telling me the Christian way. Okay. So,
or if like you were saved or, whatever, if like you became a parent and then like Christianity revitalized you, gave you new life and everything, then you're going to be or born again.
Yeah.
Then you're going to look up and be like, what other teachings are they? Because if this is the newfound energy and love of life I found in greater calling, I want my kids to experience this also.
Yeah.
So naturally, if they're like, hey, here's a book by James Dobson, then it's like, oh, cool, we'll go do what this guy says.
Yep.
Why would you not? It's a lot easier in hindsight to be like, why would you ever do that? Where it's like, no, it actually makes a ton of sense.
It makes so much sense. And I think back, when I was a parent of a 1-year-old, my oldest was 1, the church we were in at the time, they were doing like their Christian education for parents was Growing Kids God's Way by Gary and Anne-Marie Ezzo. Okay. And it turned out that we moved from that community before we were old enough to join that small group. But I often think back on that and think, absolutely, if I had joined that then, I would have trusted the leadership of my church that greenlit that. I would have trusted the other parents in that group that were teaching it. And I probably would have gone with it because I didn't know different. Like I'd never parented before. And then a lot of times in Christian communities, people are often told to mistrust their intuition or their feelings or their instincts. And I think particularly for mothers, a lot of these resources will directly say you're going to be tempted to be permissive moms. You're going to not be hard enough. And so I think there's a little bit of that bolsters this. And I thought back and thought, it is. I think it is that easy. It is. And you don't often critically examine something because the stages of parenting move so quickly. So it's not like you're going to rethink sleep training once you've already done it, probably. No, maybe you would with another child if it didn't work or something, but you kind of move on from it. And there also can be a real sunk cost fallacy in a certain way. Some of these things like spanking or different things, like to stop doing it once you've started brings up a lot of other questions. It really requires deconstruction, which for some people is unmooring and scary, or they've been warned against it. So it makes a lot of sense how people fall into this and fell into it and continue to. And part of what we would love to do is return agency to parents and say, look, there is tremendous freedom for the Christian parent, tremendous freedom. And there isn't a one size fits all. And so anyway, a lot of times people will ask us our parenting advice or tips, and we really try not to do that in the book and elsewhere, to kind of
very
say
intentionally you do not.
Like, you have agency as a Christian parent.
I like Richard Rohr a lot. I don't know if you've read much Richard Rohr.
I've read a little excerpts, not much.
I feel like he's very big on being like how fascinating it is that like you have Jesus, who God literally thought it was worth it to embody the human body in all of this. And most of Christianity is telling you to deny what your body is telling you, to be out of tune with your body. But your God thought it was so important to understand the human experience, to live in a body and understand a body. But how much of church is to be like, well, that's your emotion. You can't trust that.
Right. And this almost Gnostic thinking of like, no, it's the special knowledge, not the embodied. And honestly, I think the doctrine of the incarnation is one of the most missing things in this teaching that really leaves people bereft. Because also the idea of the incarnation is not only that Jesus was embodied, but he was a baby. He was a child. He was he was all the, and these God-given stages, these God-designed stages of development from immaturity to maturity are not flawed in themselves the way we think. That it's not sin for a child to go through a developmental stage. Jesus himself went through all of these stages. And in fact, the incarnation models this willingness of God as Father in that sense to just draw near to us. Like this, it is connection. That is what it is.
Yeah.
All of that. Well, maybe I need to pick up some Richard Rohr books
I love
in 2026. Do you?
Mysticism.
What's the one you recommend to start with?
I would probably say Falling Upward or Immortal Diamond, because he's very big on like first half of life and second half of life. Where basically first half of life is like good. It's like building your kingdom. Universal Christ is also fantastic.
I've heard that. That's the one I've maybe read excerpts from.
Well, that's the one where he's basically like, hey, if you believe God is in everything, then God's in everything. And you guys know, are we actually can we actually talk about what that means?
Yeah.
And so before we get off on too much of a Richard Rohr tangent, there's one other thing that I think all of the older parenting teachings like that I find fascinating is like neurodivergence is not part of it at all. So I do think there are examples of people being harsh with their children whenever their children couldn't process what was happening. And now that we know more about neurodivergence, it's like, hey, actually, here's like a new, like my kid goes to pre-K, and pre-K kids already have special learning plans because of how they process their life.
Yeah.
In the 70s and 80s, you would just make your kid obey. And that hurts even to say that that's a reality for some people.
It really, even adjusting for the standards of the day, however, for what the language around neurodivergence, they wouldn't have called it that, but was at the time, Christian resources have no discussion of it. No discussion of it. And I think some of this has to do with the fact that James Dobson, who was a child psychologist, though he later distanced from that and kind of like set aside his psychological credentials, was really a behaviorist. And he kind of paved the way for everyone who followed and sort of said the goal here is establishing parental authority, is disciplining and kind of conditioning your child to obey. And so there's a lot of language around that and Bible-y talk and Christian-y talk, but that's at the heart of it. And yes, when then that is the standard and there is no consideration of child development, because most of these books do not discuss child development.
It's obedience. It's straight obedience.
Yeah. So it's like, doesn't matter what's going on. And it is children as a category. It's not individual child and an individual child's needs, right? So yeah, it is troubling. And a lot of the people we heard from who were, as a result, diagnosed late in life with some kind of neurodivergence often reflected back and said, this explains why I was always getting spankings and my siblings weren't, for instance, or something like that. Because when you have this expectation for instant obedience and the only tool is corporal punishment, it just will escalate. If a child can't comply, it's perceived as strong-willed rebellion, no matter what's going on. So it's so sad in that sense because everything just escalated behind closed doors.
Correct.
On a happy note, I have heard from some people who understanding that their child was neurodivergent or a diagnosis like that became their gateway out, because they
Cool.
all of us, because they were, maybe
Yeah.
the parent was more in tuned and they were like, this isn't working with this child. This isn't working. And they began to seek outside of Christian resources to find. So sometimes
Interesting. That's
that
great.
became a kind of a surprising door out for them, that if they had had a neurotypical or a compliant child,
Mhm.
they might have just kept trying that same old thing, but it got them curious about other alternatives.
That's great because like if I have a cousin who's autistic and like
Mm,
he's not disobedient in any way. That's
yeah,
just how he processes the world. And
yeah,
I think one thing that's fascinating to me about a lot of that style of parenting is obedience is the main goal at all times. And I feel like I know a lot of people now, I'm 38, who are in their late 30s, and their relationship with boundaries is extremely hard because they were taught obedience is the only thing you should do.
yeah,
And that you don't, whenever you are just obeying, I am not part of the conversation
yeah,
in any way.
yeah,
It is,
yeah,
I exist to make you happy and for you
yeah,
to not scream at me again.
yeah,
And that's why
yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah,
That sucks.
especially when it was so early on.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of these resources will say, if you spank the right way, you don't need to keep spanking after age 6 or something,
Yeah.
which just isn't true, right? Like,
My
people
gosh.
describe it. But when you think of that happening in those really early years, like, some of them
Mhm.
talk about spanking starting in the first year,
Yeah. Like 6
like,
months old.
yeah, exactly. It's pre-verbal memory. So
Yeah.
even at that point, it is just neurologically, like, the nervous system is responding. And yes, it does train people up in a certain way. That verse, train
Mhm.
up a child, it does train people up to be looking for a voice of authority to tell them what to do and
Yeah.
obey, right? So yes,
Yeah.
boundaries, agency, their own desires and interest, all
Mhm.
of that becomes very confusing, because this top-down authority expectation for obey also displaced the natural developmental stage of differentiation and individuation. There often wasn't any tolerance for that. So we heard from a number of people where that was delayed well
Mhm.
into later adulthood, like
Yeah.
maybe it was more circumstantial. And so they're going through differentiation in their late 20s, in their
Yep.
30s, or as parents themselves, or something like that, because they were still complying
Mhm.
as teens,
Correct.
when sometimes that tends to happen. So I think that can be really difficult,
Yeah.
because yes, it's not just what was active harm was perpetrated, it's
Yeah.
what people were left bereft of,
Correct.
like the ability to make decisions. And I would hope that for people actively parenting, or for even parents reflecting back, that able to, like, take a more long range view of parenting to say, do you really want to teach your child instant compliance,
Yeah.
instant unquestioned, like, tease that out down the road. Like, is that what you want for them in the workplace,
Mhm.
in the community, like, in anything? Is that really true? It may make your day simpler now with
Yeah.
your 5-year-old getting in the car.
Yeah.
Yes, like, logistically, that's probably easier, but down the road, that it's not going to serve
Correct.
that anybody well. So
Yep. No, I
yeah,
mean, there's tons of examples of people who have been raised like that, predatory behavior. Like,
of
you're
course,
very
yeah,
susceptible to people to use and abuse you
yeah,
in multiple ways. I feel like I feel like I saw some meme or something like that that was like, people always tell you to trust your gut unless you were told your entire childhood and life your gut isn't worth listening to. So
ugh,
that phrase of
yeah,
like, hey, trust your gut, and it's like, well, if a system of power told you every single day your gut isn't worth listening
yeah,
to, you don't
yeah.
know what's your gut. You don't know what's your gut,
I
what's
know,
trauma, what's anything.
right?
So don't
Yeah,
say that phrase to me.
yeah, well, and if you were trained day in and day out to that you needed to comply, or that love means doing what someone else tells you to do,
Hmm.
right? Like sacrificing your feelings or
Yeah,
dying to self, or all of these messages that also came with religious catechesis, then your gut is really buried under all of
it
that.
is. It
Right.
is.
And
Yeah.
I think we don't, I don't know if we talk about it in the book very much, but I've written about it elsewhere. I do think a lot of these resources cultivated scrupulosity or religious OCD in people,
Okay.
because they were constantly told to, examine motives and die to
Hmm.
self, and were they obeying and were they
Yeah.
sinning and things like that. And I think that can also really impact people's spiritual formation and their spiritual intuition, because there's always that voice of, like, you probably have something to confess. You've
Correct.
probably done something wrong.
Yep.
You've probably messed. If something bad happens in your life,
Yeah.
it's probably your sin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whew, the
I
messages go really deep.
I think Martin Luther did that, in which he would
Hmm.
go to confession and then he would confess about his ego about confessing.
Yeah.
So he would do like
Bless him.
marathon sessions of
Yes.
being like, well, I forget, well, I've confessed everything. Well, now I have an ego about confession. So now I
Yeah.
must confess my ego about confession. And it's just, it's Ouroboros. It's just snake getting its own tail
It's just ruminating.
after a while.
Yep. So yeah, I think that's a piece of it. Yeah. It's a lot to unpack. And for people who were really formed by this and then they become parents, like, yes, it is a lot of work to be untangling all of this.
Very much so. Yeah. And personally, as someone who has to me, deconstruction is reanalyzing something you were told when you were younger and just reassessing your relationship with it. And that entire process has honestly created a much healthier definition of religion, God, relationship with all of that for me. So it's always fascinating to me when people are scared of deconstruction for whatever reason, because I'm like, actually, there might be something that's holding you back you don't realize until you start to research it and start to understand it.
Well, and I think you've maybe seen this. There's several versions of it, but kind of like the phases of spiritual development for faith formation. Deconstruction is a necessary component of that. And
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Who talks about this? I like how it's called Mid-Faith Crisis. It's by. Anyway, I'll send you a link after if you want to put it. Yeah. They summarize them. Like, there's a number of spiritual directors and others who have said it, and the authors of that book kind of put forward, like, this is probably something you will have at least once in your faith journey, but maybe multiple times. Yeah. And that's good and healthy. Because staying in this position, the first stage of faith formation is that kind of unquestioned certainty, that black and white thinking, that kind of maybe if we grew up in Christian communities, we received as teenagers, and there are wonderful and lovely and good things about that stage of development, but it cannot carry forward. So a lot of people come to that point of deconstruction and it's either exit, double down and not think about anything, or the invitation out. And so I think that's important. And I always want to encourage people, if people still highly value the scriptures, like, we have good depiction of deconstruction in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. Paul talks about this. He's talking about all the different teachers people have followed. I follow Paul, I follow Apollos. And this is in the passage where he is saying, like, it's the teachers, their work will be tested to see what fruit it bears and if it will last. The foundation of Jesus Christ is solid. Like, Jesus himself will hold, but all this other scaffolding we've built will be tested. And I think this is not something to be afraid of, but to say, maybe as a teacher, it is. Like, not many should be teachers. Like, maybe it's sobering as a teacher. But for the people of God, this is good news. Like, Jesus is the foundation. We'll be constantly kind of testing and seeing whether things align with him and his life and teaching or not. And that is okay. But for a lot of people, I think it's unmooring.
It is. And where in my head, I'm like, oh, this is, if anything, it makes me, I think one of the main things is you're pretty fallible for existence as a human. So like, oh, cool. What was the teaching? What was it founded in? What was the origins of it? Human ego always shows itself. So it's gonna tip the scale one way or the other. So learn about it and then adjust. Yeah. And I think your love of the creator will still be there. So
that's
my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it can cultivate a humility too. Like, I tend to think we're all, no matter what, we're all little heretics to some degree. But we're doing the best we can to but there's a lot we're probably that's incomplete or inaccurate, and that's okay. That can be an invitation to grace too, which is can relieve some of that heavy burden of like, have I got it all right?
Yeah, exactly. And isn't grace like what attracted you to the gospel in the first place?
Right.
I think so.
Right. And I think even you mentioned Martin Luther earlier, like, that became his gateway out of that rumination, right? Was this radical free fall into God's grace. And yes, he was still serious about his theology and his doctrine and different things, and was a remarkably flawed person as well.
Yeah, like, that's a different podcast episode.
But I do think that I feel like grace is something you're either all in on or you're not. So if we really are all in on grace and trusting Jesus to save us, then we need not fear deconstruction. We can do that.
I think so. My mom or my parents always raised me like, if one question destroys your entire reality, what was the foundation that you built it on? And I totally get it. One question can destroy everything. Like, there's
scary.
A lot to that.
Yeah,
it
is
can be
scary.
But if one question makes me reject everything, I think it says more about the soil you were planted in than about the question itself. So
I like
anyway,
that.
before we talk too much about deconstruction, I will start to wrap up the episode.
Sure. There's lots I'm sure we could talk for longer. It's great.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
So how I end every episode is ask every guest a series of 5 questions.
I'm ready.
First thing, are you okay with mentioning like the names of your kids? I know you discussed like privacy of your kids. The first question is did you have any backup names for your kids? But if you're like, I don't want to say that, I'm trying to keep their names more something they have control over, then I'll choose a different question.
Yeah, well, I can answer it in a way that protects their
Okay.
privacy if you
Sweet,
want.
cool.
Because we overthought the names, of course.
You know, I would have never
Right,
thought that you would ever
so
think
we
something.
did end up picking for their middle names. We went for some fun things. So our first 3 have mythical creatures for their middle name, and our second 3 have like poetic kind of meaningful names. So anyway, we had a lot of fun with the naming process, but we figured we got to give them a name they can like go to work with.
Is one of your kids' middle name Leviathan?
No. They're still normal names.
Okay,
they are still
just
normal
making
names.
sure. Okay,
but
okay.
they're connected to mythical creatures. So
Okay.
yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Minotaur, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. You can not that no unicorns
Okay,
or narwhals.
that's good. Okay,
they're
okay.
actual names, but
Narwhals aren't real? I thought.
I think they're real. They're real, right?
I don't know.
I think of them as mythical.
They're an elf. That's all I know. That's really
I think they're real. Anyway, we did not name our kid. There are names where it wouldn't be too weird out there, but that was fun. And yeah, we overthought. All their names have meanings too. Bless our kids. Like we are.
I was like, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, guys.
But also they immediately like, yeah, this is just who my parents were.
Right. Maybe we needed 6 to kind of chill out at the end. I do think about that sometimes if like we've been so intense. It was very fun. And some that got, so our daughter really, a contender was Dorothy. I loved the name Dorothy. It means gift of God. It was my great aunt's name. So she was almost a Dorothy. We almost had Endeavor, which was too weird for everyone. So I put that in one of my books. It's in one of my books. It's too much, right? Any that were like too much, I put them as a character in a book. So I did have an outlet for that.
Just for your child's sake, I'm glad that some part of you was like,
too much. No, we couldn't do it.
It's too much.
Even for a middle name, it was too much. I'm trying to think what other ones. It's been a while. We kept our list. What about you guys? Did you have any fanciful names?
We did plant names. So,
cool.
Yeah. So all of our kids have a plant name that's like a tree. So the backup names would have been like Rose. We thought about Marigold and calling her Mary, but Mari.
I love Marigold. We almost had a Violet. Violet was on our list. I liked Violet. Yep.
So it's funny to like, I mean, you named a lot of boys. Boy names, I feel like you either go quirky or super traditional, and there's not a lot in between.
It was tough. By the end, we were like, we would pull out our lists from like the first one and be like, okay, what other? And sometimes we'd laugh. And some of them we were like, we really thought about Hawthorne as a name, but this is a plant name. Maybe you guys did Hawthorne. I don't know. Which I liked it. But, we would look back and be like, that felt right for that kid, but not right at all for this one. So it was interesting, right? It's a cool process.
Like the whole process of naming a child, I always like zoom out and go, have you ever walked up to a stranger and just given them a name? Because that's basically what you're doing.
Right.
Whenever you have a kid, be like, hey, I know it says Marissa here, but I'm going to call you Kate for this entire call. Because that feels right to me in this moment.
It's very weird. And as someone who bears a name that was like so popular in the 80s and then like disappeared off
nowhere. I've never met a Marissa under 30.
Right. It's like we're going to be the like Barbaras of our generation or whatever. It was like really popular. So anyway, it's funny. And it's funny to see how the trends go too, right? Like we would think we were so ahead of the curve. Like even when we were considering Violet, like we were like, this is an unusual old fashioned name. And now it's a very
Violet,
popular
Iris,
one.
and Edith. They're everywhere. Yep.
So it's funny.
That's awesome. Next question. Who's your favorite? You can do either TV, movie, or book mom. Like who's your favorite like mother character?
I've not gotten this question before. Yes. Well, okay. So I am an Ella Montgomery fangirl, diehard. Like I have read all her books over and over, all the Anne books. I have read all of her novels, all of her journals, all of it. Okay. So I know it's not necessarily very realistic, but I would say Anne Blythe, Anne Shirley, who becomes Anne Blythe. Okay. Blythe is probably, even though it's a very Victorian, idealistic motherhood, I still love it. I also like Mrs. Weasley in the Harry Potter novels. If we're talking about literary, like I like her kind of like fierce maternal, but kind of like homey, chaotic, I like that. And that's what comes to mind.
That's fair. That's it. Anyway, next question. What's your replacement curse word? Like about to cars in front of kids, stub your toe, something like that. What do you say instead? flibbity gibbet, gosh darn it, sound effects.
Rats? I think I say rats a lot. Like, oh, rats.
Rats.
Rats. I don't know. So we don't, this is going to sound bad. We don't like actively curse in front of our kids, but we don't do a lot of euphemisms. So I'm sure they've heard me say like words, particularly the older kids, like not as much under younger kids.
Yeah, it's different. That's different.
I think just rats is probably as exciting as I'm going to get. I just don't know.
Rats. I do feel like for the more 50s sounding replacements, you do have to do an arm motion where they'd be like, oh, rats. You cut your hand cooking and you used to go, oh, rats.
Or something. I don't know.
Dadgummit was Nate Bargatze's dad's like go-to replacement.
Yeah,
we just say dadgummit.
What is your replacement?
Sound effects. Just obscure sound effects.
Yeah.
Just being like, because if I start to say the words, if I start to be like, or I do like the formula I also like is son of a and then change out. Like whatever.
Like
so I get 3/4 of the way there. And my brain is like, you did most of the work, man. We'll get you you can pull out for this one. So son of a water bottle, just whatever. So there's actually with my sarcastic personality, I'm more like my tongue go, oh, that's not a good. That's not.
Yeah.
Didn't want to do that. That's gonna be painful for 2 months now. That's good. So
just talk it out.
Talk it out. Just like not to anyone, just myself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. Next question. What's like one of your favorite like toys or activities that you do with your kids?
Okay. Like I love puzzles.
Okay.
So I like to do puzzles with my kids. I love reading aloud. That's like my favorite activity to do with them probably is read books aloud.
Cool.
But we're also big board game people. So I love board games and I love that they're all old enough to do interesting board games now. They're like there's a phase where you play a lot of Candyland and Uno and stuff.
It's rough.
So it's very fun when they are out of that phase. I think those would be the ones. It was harder for me when they were younger and it was like, let's play cars on the floor or something. Like some of that
for 3 hours.
Yeah, that was not my fave. So I do like the board game puzzles type thing. Yeah. And weirdly, you would think I would like telling them stories, but that's kind of my kryptonite. When they're like, can you tell us a story instead of read us a story? And I'm like, oh, maybe because it feels like work. I don't know. But I'm like, no, let's read a story, please.
Yeah. Well, have you ever watched the kids show Kif? It's like on Disney.
I don't think so.
It's like a squirrel who has a very strong personality. But there's an episode where like she wants her dad to read her story and she critiques the story. She's like, you're not doing the voice. Like they're both at like the end of the day. And the dad's like, there's a dragon. And she's like, you gave me no backstory for the dragon. You didn't do the voice.
That's amazing.
And then mom comes in and does the exact same thing. And she gets to the end. She's like, yeah, you didn't tell me, like, you didn't do a voice for this person. And it's just like, yeah, it's like freaking 9 p.m. Why are you still awake? Like, what are we doing here? So, this
is all I got in the tank here.
I gave you a story like 8 a.m. What do you like? I'm not booking you with original content, kid. Come on.
Yeah. I just like I don't know, like my youngers are still old enough to want to do bedtime rituals. Cool. And I think I do think this is the hidden grace of having 6. Like some of them, I'm just like, this isn't forever. Like it's going to be over so soon. So I will, as long as they want it, I will climb in bed next to them and while I fall asleep and read story, all of that. So that's my favorite probably time of the day.
That's sweet. That's very sweet.
Yeah.
And then last question. I don't know if you guys watch much TV at all, but do you have a least favorite kids show? Like whenever your kids would want to watch it or a song or anything like that, where you were like, this hurts. This is not something I want to be a part of anymore.
Yeah, Paw Patrol.
Okay.
Yeah, we had some Paw Patrol years. And I mean, we'll laugh, but yeah, the song and the inane recipe, but they loved it.
It's a formula.
We had some of the toy, we didn't like ban it or anything. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think with the older, because kids changed quite a bit between the younger and the older. I think the older we were more like intentional about like, no, we won't do those things. I remember when they got into SpongeBob grew on me though. But when they first got into him, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But then it grew on me and it's funny. So, it kind of shifted and changed. For then it probably would have been, I'm sorry to say it. Actually, this is across the board. It's the Pokemon ones.
Yeah. Well, they're like so much. There's so much stimulation. I don't know what's happening.
I don't get it.
It's a lot. It's constant.
Yes. And Pokemon and Sonic are ones I've heard a lot, and Minecraft. I hear a lot about these things over the years, and I still do not get it. And I just can't bring myself to like retain.
Yeah.
So probably like every one of my sons has told me about what Pokemon is, what Minecraft is,
No,
and
you
I've
have
gotten
5
tutored.
sons. Yeah.
And I'm just like, I know Pikachu's a thing, and like whatever, you know.
Well, also like when we were kids, they had like there were only like 2 or 3 games, and now there's like been 6 other games. So like the amount of Pokemon that exists, there's like thousands now. Where like if you give me like Pokemon Red or Blue or whatever, I'd be like, oh, I can somewhat understand you, but
it is beyond
not anymore.
I'm too old for it. I
don't care. I don't care. I don't care.
Like there's a meme out there somewhere. It was like someone, or maybe it's a tweet someone sent out. Like, can you die from hearing your kid's Pokemon dream? Because I think you can. You know, and I feel that sometimes, right? Because always it's like I dream. They dream about it and
Pikachu
recount their
was there,
dream.
and it only took one
like,
throw for me to get
honey,
Pikachu, and then we went on all these adventures. Can you tell your brother about this instead? That'd be great.
What would you answer for that one? I'm curious.
Mine is Super Kitties, which is like a Disney show.
We've
it's
watched
like,
Super Kitties.
I cannot. It's so much.
Okay, but can you handle Paw Patrol? Because I like Super Kitties better than Paw Patrol, probably because I like cats. But it's the same kind of formula.
It's basically the same formula. I think Super Kitties, Paw Patrol, I can understand because it's all problem-solving focused. It's like, here's the problem, here's the solution. What's the team we need to do to get towards it?
Yeah. Okay.
And for some reason, that's okay with me. Super Kitties is just like, by the way, Lab Rat can do this. And you're just like,
it's true.
What are the definitions of your reality, guys? Like, you have to have clear set rules for me to understand and follow. Second season, now they have different superpowers. Like, no, you guys this is a lazy show. This is an AI show, okay?
Yeah, it does. They do feel a little bit like that.
It's just that still be like, by the way, Lab Rat can do this now. And you're just like, why is Lab Rat doing that?
Yeah.
So I also, for both shows, get annoyed the lack of consequences for the people that run amok constantly.
Me too. I was just going to say that. Like, I'm kind of like, I get what they're doing of trying to cultivate some empathy, like not make these cardboard cutout villains. But it's like at a certain point,
Mayor Humdinger is a bad mayor.
He's just going to keep doing it. So like, we need to do something about this.
You need to create a series of negative consequences that make Mayor Humdinger rethink his decisions.
Yes.
That's what I'm sure that I'll write the sequel to Paw Patrol after this.
So. Or the 20 sequels.
The 20 sequels.
Whatever they're on now.
I don't even know. But only other thing I have for you is just moment of self-promotion. Where do we find your book? Instagram, TikTok. Do some self-promotion for your book.
Sure.
All that stuff.
You can find me across social media platforms at Burt Writes. I'm active on a lot of them, mostly active on Instagram and Substack. I do long-form writing. I don't know when will this one come out?
Probably January, February.
In January. Okay, I would say but I'll say it anyway, like around the holidays, always for my middle grade novels, I'm always happy to drop a signed book plate in the mail for kid readers, just because I think that's fun. And I would have liked that as a kid. So if you check those out and are interested in that, just send me a message. I'm happy to drop that in the mail. But find me across there. If you're interested in this topic, Kelsey, my co-author, and I did a limited run podcast called In the Church Library, where we discussed specific resources in depth and kind of interviewed different people. That could be a way to connect more around the topic of the book too.
Yeah. Are you guys doing a book tour at all?
Virtually.
Okay, cool.
So we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a sheet and I'll send it along. It has links to whatever you want to include in show notes. Thank you so much.
Of course, Marissa, I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
It's great. Hi, buddy.
See you next time.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Imperfect Dads Podcast. And make sure to give us 5 stars wherever you listen to us. Music, editing, and production is all done by me. Make sure to tune in on Mondays and most Thursdays for new episodes. This podcast is part of the Never a Phase Network. Make sure to go to neverafphasenetwork.com to learn more about them.